Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning live on Channels Television. Now to our next conversation. Turn our focus to the real estate sector after the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted activities, which are the heart of real estate business, and the industry has continued to play catch-up in 2021 as the business environment was, dampened by inflation, skyrocketing exchange rates. Nigeria's real estate sector posted 3.85% growth in the second quarter of 2021 and expanded by 10% year-on-year in the third quarter, as well as sustained a positive quarterly year-on-year growth trend since Q1, the first quarter of 2021. Well, despite the quarter figure reflecting high economic activity, real estate and construction remained quite low. Well, joining me now to weigh on this is Bamidele Adewale, MD CEO, P1 Stars, to discuss this and other issues in the real estate sector. Great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so paint a picture for me, for you. How did the real estate sector perform in 2021?
Well, I think it didn't do too badly. People expected it to do a bit better. But I think it didn't do too badly, considering where it was coming from in 2020. Now, in 2020, the real estate sector was literally down because of COVID, obviously. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why is because during the COVID period, everybody was focused on survival. That's what the focus was on, just survival, right? So people weren't really thinking so much about real estate. So it really suffered a dip. I personally witnessed it because I'm a player myself. I'm a developer in the real estate space. So I know how bad things were. But then I also saw a bit of a pickup towards the end of 2020 and into 2021. So I want to say that, yes, it wasn't as big as other sectors, but I don't think it did too badly, given the circumstances with COVID and with all of the uncertainties, inflation and all of that. I don't think it did too badly, to be honest.
All right. Now let's look at, luxury real estate now. How would you say it performed last year?
Luxury real estate did not perform so well. And I think that's partly because, I think COVID affected the income of everybody, really, both the middle class, the upper class, and I think the luxury segment has been suffering a bit of a dip over time.
Yeah, because you go around Banana Island, you see
there are a lot of, so it's not just something that happened last year or 2 years ago. It's something that we've witnessed over the last 5-6 years. There's been a bit of a dip in the luxury end. Where we're seeing growth is more in the middle segment, right, and a bit of the lower segment, but more in the middle segment. The upper end has been down for quite a while.
And I'm sure commercial real estate too, with the whole everyone going virtual now, people not needing to
exactly
have offices.
Absolutely.
Like before. How's that looking?
That is also looking like it might be suffering a little bit because now because of COVID, a lot of people feel they don't have to have offices. They don't have to have brick and mortar offices. So a lot of people work from home nowadays. A lot of people are going into technology and all of that, just to find better ways to do their business. So I see a bit of a dip as well in the commercial segment. I think where we might experience growth is more in the residential space and a bit of the industrial space. But the commercial space might probably witness a little bit of a dip going forward.
All right, let's look at some support that the real estate sector enjoyed. What did you see? Looking at government intervention in 2021, what for you was more beneficial for the sector? Coming from the government.
I think the government did quite a little bit. First of all, they established an agency called LASRERA, which is the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Agency. That was established, I think, a couple of years ago, 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was also an enabling law that was signed last year, right, by the State House of Assembly. So that equipped them with the powers to actually enforce certain regulations and all of that. So that, I believe, would bring some sort of confidence to investors in the real estate space. But I do believe that time will tell regarding how well they're able to implement the law and sort of sanitize the industry. Okay, but at least they've taken the first step, which is to create the agency and to also create an enabling law. But I do believe that governments can do quite a bit more. I would like to see a bit more of private-public partnerships going forward, because I believe the government can play a role in terms of creating sort of the land. The government has the land, right? So let them create the land. Let the private sector then come and develop on that land. Let's see a bit more of that partnership going forward, okay? Then I think in terms of the banking space, obviously we want to see rates come down. one of the biggest challenges that real estate developers face is high escalating interest rates.
And we see global, regulators hiking rates at this
Yeah,
time.
global regulators hiking rates, and obviously that has an
MPC is
impact.
meeting, we don't know what to
We don't know what's
expect
going to happen there. So obviously all of that has an impact on the space. And another thing is the banks don't even lend. A lot of them don't even lend to the real estate space. And I think part of the reason is because of the risk as well, But I would like to see banks lend a little bit more, because truth of the matter is that to really do well as a real estate developer, you need funds. You need access to capital. So one of the biggest challenges we face as developers is lack of funds. And when you have the funds are quite expensive.
Right. All right. We did see a Lagos State governor, push for, monthly rent in Lagos. For you, how feasible is that?
I think it can work to an extent. Again, the problem of implementation. How do you then force the landlord or the landowner or the house owner to enforce some of these things? Because a lot of transactions are done informally in Nigeria, generally, so it's very difficult. I remember a few years ago, they brought up this policy that says you cannot charge more than, you shouldn't be doing up to 2 years rental and all of that, but it wasn't implemented. A lot of landlords still do 2 years. Some even do more than 2 years.
Some were compelled.
Some were compelled to, but I don't think it really had the impact that was envisaged. Right? Now, this might probably have a bit of an impact in the short term, because some people might feel, oh, let's quickly comply so that we don't run foul of the law. But I believe that if the government doesn't ensure that it continues to monitor the implementation of this policy, then we would go back to square one. That's what would happen eventually.
All right, let's look at foreign participation now. How would were there foreign investors? What was their participation like last year in the real estate sector?
There was a bit of foreign investors that came in, that brought money into Nigeria. But I believe that in 2022, I think it might dip a little bit. And I think the reason is because, think about it. What are the enablers of foreign investment, foreign direct investments? Foreign investors want to see an environment that is free of country risk, or at least the country risk is reduced to the barest minimum, okay? They want an environment where there's ease of doing business. They want FX stability. You all know how the FX rates have been fluctuating. That's a very, very big elephant in the room, So they want to see some level of FX stability. They want to see some security. Security is very, very big. And mind you, we're in a pre-election year, right? So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty regarding who the next administration is going to be.
And I'm sure that whole Magodo issue also,
it
wasn't a pretty look.
Exactly, so there's also concerns regarding the judicial system and, conflicts within the real estate space. And also there are the macro issues, which I've spoken about. And then there are also sector-specific issues as well, which I believe, we Nigerians, we can deal with some of these things. We're used to some of these things, right? We've lived here all our lives, so we understand the system. But the foreigners don't really understand the system the way we do. So they're likely to be a bit more circumspect.
They won't understand why Omonile will be asking for
roofing and all those kind of things. So I think there might be a bit of a slowdown, personally, in the area of foreign direct investments in 2022. However, once the new administration comes on board in 2023 and we begin to hopefully see some level of stability in the macro economy and in the real estate space, then we might begin to see a bit more involvement of
All right, let's talk about, reforms in that sector now. What kind of reforms would you like to see, regarding this issue now of Omoniles in this country?
I think the government has to play a role. The government has to step in. They've tried in the past, and it hasn't really quite worked. So I think they need to put in a lot more efforts. Now they have Lashrera. That is a good sign. Okay, they have a law, right? But then we need to ensure that from a judicial perspective, from our laws, just in terms of implementing and enforcing the laws that we have, right, they do a bit more. Cases need to be tried very, the speed, the timeline in terms of trying cases, that needs to be improved upon. And I just think there should be a lot more regulation of the space. I don't think we are really there yet. The sector is not really regulated. The way, for instance, you have the banking sector or the insurance sector, we don't really have that much regulation. So I think the government really has a very big role to play.
Yeah, quite a big role. But, it's 2022. What kind of investment opportunities, trends do you see, popping up this year?
Well, I would obviously start with real estate because that's, and it's not really because it's my field. It's more because I think from a risk perspective and a return perspective as well, I think real estate presents a bit of a safe haven for a lot of people. Because really, think about it. It's brick and mortar. It's there. You can't steal it. You can't steal land. Once you have land, it's yours.
But there's another risk there.
Okay.
You know, when you buy land for instance, you buy land and maybe you don't develop it yet.
Okay.
Then you have issues where somebody comes and says, "Oh, this is my land."
That's trespass. So of course, you have the risk of trespass. That is. But of course, if you buy from a proper real estate company, okay, and you do your due diligence and you secure, I usually advise people to secure their landed.
That's another issue of taking possession.
Immediately.
But, you know, sometimes funds. You don't have funds.
Yeah,
to
you
take
don't have the
possession.
funds.
So what do you do?
No, I'm not.
Why can't you peacefully hold land?
Well, of course, I'm not saying real estate is free of risk. Of course, there are some risks, but I'm just saying that relatively compared to other asset classes, it's relatively low risk. Okay. So beyond real estate, I also think that there will be opportunities in the stock markets. I'm quite bullish about the stock market this year. And I think the reason is because being a pre-election year, there's going to be a lot of spending. Government is going to spend money, private sector is going to spend money. And as a result, the companies are going to do well. I see a lot of companies in the financial services sector, in the real estate space, everywhere. I think a lot of companies are going to do well in 2022, and as a result, that would impact on their stock prices. So I see some opportunities there in the stock market.
But one of the sad moments of 2021, that Ikoyi building collapse, that was quite a sad moment, for the country. But how do you think that has shaped, practices in in the construction sector?
I think what has happened is that people would become a lot more careful about where they invest their monies, especially in that space. So gone are the days where you just invest in just any company that has a project in Ikoyi or in Victoria Island or in one of those highbrow areas. I think people will become a bit more careful. And I think the regulators as well, the government as well, would also become a bit more sort of the scrutiny in terms of approvals and permits and all of that to be a lot higher going forward. So they won't just approve just any projects just for approving's sake. Okay, so I see a lot of, like I said, what I would like to call flight to safety. People moving to safer developers that have a bit more of a track record, right? I see that happening, and I see a bit more sanity being introduced into the space. I think it's, even though it was an unfortunate incident, I also want to see the good sides, and I think that eventually the real estate space, especially in that aspect, in that space, I think it will be better for it going forward.
And we still have the issue of quackering that in this space.
Obviously.
Talking about developers. Real estate agents, how can we address all of that?
I think, again, I will still go back to the government. I think the government has a very big role to play, just in terms of regulation, right? For instance, in developed countries, before you can go into real estate, you have to meet certain criteria. You have to have a certain minimum capital base, for instance. And I think that would help if we had, for instance, a capital base. So let's create barriers to entry. I think it's a bit too easy to enter the real estate space. I think just any Tom, Dick, and Harry can enter now. So I think what the government should do is to create some barriers to entry into the space, make it a bit more difficult for professionals or for real estate players to play in that sector. That way would be able to ensure that we sieve out sort of the bad eggs, quote and unquote, and gradually we'll then begin to move to the space where we are a lot more confident in our sector. And foreign direct investment would also improve as well.
Exactly, with all of that. All right, give me your outlook now for 2022, talking about this sector all around.
I think 2022 is going to be big for real estate, and for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I think, again, I'll go back to the fact that it's a pre-election year, so there's going to be a lot of spending, okay? So all of that spending would dovetail into more projects, more construction, and all of that, okay? Now, there's also another very, very key factor that would also improve the prospect of real estate in 2022, which is infrastructure. We've seen quite a bit of infrastructure being done. For instance, I'll give you three projects, just three major projects. You have the Lekki-Epe Expressway. They're working on, the state government is working on the roads. They're expanding the roads all the way from Ajah all to Epe, right? And then you have the Ijebu-Ode-Epe Expressway, which has been done. Very good job that was done. And then the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Those three projects alone have the capacity to really significantly boost. And then you have the Dangote refinery, which I expect, a lot of people expect it to kick off in 2022. All of that would have a significantly positive impact on the real estate space. So I'm quite confident and I'm quite positive that we'll see some good growth in 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep watching that space to see how it grows. We've had Bamidele Adewale, CEO P1 Stars. Thank you so much for giving us your time on Business Morning today.
Thank you for having me once again.
All right. Let's head on to the markets now with Aniete right there. Just after this short break.